what I understand, I mean, with whatever you have said just now, what I understand is that protectors are not literal protectors. They are not saviors or they are not rescuers, of a rescue mission. All what they do is, make things more doable and bearable, make you a
Terrible.
better survivor so that you can keep moving on in life.
Yep.
Hey everyone, I hope everyone is doing good and taking good care of themselves. So today we have with us Melissa Sandfort, and I will let her introduce herself, but to give you guys a little bit of a backstory, I was, active on Substack from quite some time, and I came across a couple of her posts, and trust me, it really hit home. It really made sense, and I was like, "Who is she?" And then I started doing, all the digging, and I became detective for some time, and I was like, "Wow, this is an interesting person." She has a traumatic upbringing, childhood. She had her share of challenges and suffering. So I thought, I mean, a survivor turned into a healer. Wow, I mean, this sounds home, and she's just like me. I mean, a twin sister, so why not have her and let her teach her more things, because I am not much into IFS. Yes, I have hosted a lot of individuals. I do study IFS, but she herself, is in a stable position because of IFS. IFS literally changed her life. So yes, we are going to hear her story, her viewpoints, how she views, limerence and love and, the IFS system. So without any delay, let me welcome Melissa Sandfort. Melissa, thank you so much for joining in today.
You're so welcome, Sarah. This is super fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, we tried connecting earlier, but there was some issue. So again, we are back together, and I hope we are going to have an amazing chit chat today. So Melissa, I would request you to please introduce yourself for my viewers, who Melissa is.
Yeah. So, I started out, just thinking I had a regular childhood, like a lot of people who are serious abuse survivors
Mm-hmm.
actually just have complete Stockholm syndrome, right? Total trauma bonding. Like I also had really severe traumatic amnesia. So I did not
Oh
remember
God.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
I had no memories of all this abuse, right? And then but I had like a lot of problems that were just weird. Like in my senior year in college at Northwestern, I had such severe pain, joint pain, that I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair,
Oh God, I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm.
and like out of nowhere. I mean, where's this coming from, right? Like, what was the cause? I went,
Yeah.
I went to see a physical therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I was so loving. He was so loving. I mean, I just got the best physical therapist in the world. And nothing he did really helped me at all, right? He was like just, he was like, I don't know how to help you. And so he started
Mm-hmm.
to do just fascia work where he would literally, what he would do is just put his hands on my stomach. And that just slowly, like kind of, they would sink into like on the level of the fascia, right? To just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
contact my nervous system. And
Mm-hmm.
he starts crying, this guy. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on? He's like, your fascia, okay, it is so like so tense. It's
Mm-hmm.
your body is like you're a war survivor.
Oh
I was
God.
like, okay, So like he gave up on trying to do physical therapy on me, and all he tried to do was just calm my nervous system down with this
Wow.
relief work. Because
Mhm.
I was just like, you know, such an extreme trauma survivor that like he could feel it in my tissue, way before I even had any clue, right?
Mhm.
So I'm slowly getting really weird somatic memories back of like, I'm like, what is this? What is this? And meanwhile, I'm also experiencing, even though like in my day-to-day life, I feel like I'm a pretty functional person. I'm trying to get good grades, whatever, but my body is falling apart. I'm also, if I ever have a couple of days where like I don't have anything to do, like say I have a couple days off, or I don't have like, I don't know, whatever, you know, just
Mhm.
weekend or something, I'll binge eat. Like I have an eating disorder and it's getting worse. Like it's just slowly but surely, like I'll binge and I'll binge more and I'll binge more. And like, it's like I become another person. I'm literally, like in IFS language, like my firefighters take over and then they just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat like sugar. It's a sugar addiction, right? Like I go get like, cookies and cakes and brownies and cupcakes and all this stuff, and I will eat it and eat it and eat it until I'm just vomiting and it's coming out both ends. I mean, TMI, but so
Mhm.
this eating disorder just gets worse and worse and worse until finally I'm like, I could die. I mean, because as people in the mental health field may know, eating disorders have one of the highest rates of death of any mental health disorder. So I'm really like, this is just, I'm really scared at this point. Like, this is really getting out of control. It's like maybe every 10 days, every 2 weeks. I mean, I'm binging, I'm throwing up. I mean, it's just, and this is going on for like 10 years. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, I have
Mhm.
no idea what the hell, right? So I end up going to see this therapist that I had in college, Susan Mason, and
Mhm.
she um she just starts doing this like amazing therapy with me. Like she doesn't tell me what it is at all. She's just doing it.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've later found out it was IFS, right? And
Oh,
so I start doing IFS with her 2 times a week, and she cured my eating disorder in 3 months of 2 times a week.
wow. That's
10 years,
good.
life threatening eating disorder cured in 3 months with IFS. So to
Mhm.
think that I'm amazed and astonished, this is the best therapy I've ever found in my entire life. I mean, and all this time I've been trying to find therapy, I've been trying to get help, but nothing has helped me. Okay. Nothing has made a dent. Right. So I say to her, Susan, what are we doing? Like, what is this therapy? And she goes, oh, it's
Mm.
water. I'm like, hey, like, I want to know,
Mm.
what is this? This is amazing. And she goes, oh, it's like, I don't know, there's a conference. I'm like, excuse me, there's a conference, right? So the IFS conference happened to be held in like near Chicago where I live, an hour away.
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm going to that conference, right? So I
Mm.
drag the information out of her and I go to the conference. I go to Mike Elkin's workshop on addictions, and I am riveted. I mean, I sit there, I'm like, this is the most amazing thing I have ever heard in my entire life. And as I'm sitting in that chair listening to Mike Elkin, and he's flaring his eyeballs because he goes, like, he's the most wacky guy.
Mm.
I'm like, that's it. I fell in love with IFS. I can remember walking through the doorway of that room, of that conference room at St. Mary's, saying, this is my path in life. And I never looked
Wow.
back. And I've only fallen in love more and more and more with IFS every day. And that was 20
Mhm.
years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I went on to do every IFS training I possibly could, which back in the day, like in 2002, it wasn't very popular, right? It was
Mhm.
fringe. And so you could just take every training you wanted to take. So for 15 years, I took every IFS training I could take. I spent over $100,000 on IFS training. I just, like, I'd rather
Wow.
have IFS training than a house. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I did 2 level 1, 5 level 2, and 13 level 3 trainings with Richard Schwartz. I have 2,350 hours of IFS training. And
Wow.
I am all in on IFS. And I do at least 2 hours of IFS a day with myself now. So
Mhm.
I'm all IFS
Wow.
all the time, and I'm the poster
Mhm.
child for IFS.
Mhm. And Melissa, what inspired you to, become a life coach, IFS life coach? I mean, you were a survivor. I mean, was it because IFS helped you overcome your, addiction, or was it something else, that IFS, empowered at various deeper levels where you felt that maybe I am equipped now to go out there and, pull others also out of their, mess?
Yeah, well, I was a private tutor, and so I was working
Mhm.
with kids, teenagers, like middle school and high school students, and I really
Mhm.
saw how so much of their school problems weren't about school. It was about their parents, and it was about, like psychological dynamics. So I started to bring some of the IFS work that I was doing with myself, and my training into my work with the students, which was very effective and helpful. And then I also I had thought that I was going to go to grad school, and like become an English professor, or then I decided I was going to get a grad degree in performance studies. But
Mm.
um, along the way, I was taking a class in Tibetan Buddhism in grad school at Northwestern. I was getting a master's degree in performance studies. And one day I was like, you know what? So we were studying like meditation and, I don't know, really weird, far out kind of Tibetan Buddhist stuff like Tartang Tolku, like really like fringe Tibetan Buddhist stuff. And I knew that there was this meditation school nearby. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to go to that meditation school. It was just this like instinct.
Mhm.
Gotta go. I gotta go. Right.
Mhm.
So I like call like, information because at the time I like just had a flip phone, right? It was like 2002.
Mhm.
And I'm like, there's some meditation school nearby. And like the operator just was like, oh, I think it's this Don Center here, right? So it's like right around the corner where I was driving. I mean, I shouldn't have been on the phone driving, but whatever. Okay. So anyway, I go to this meditation center and I found my spiritual teacher. I just
Wow.
like
Mhm.
a miracle. Okay. And so I was like, that's it. Cause the way I am, I'm all in. Like what, just I'm all in. When I find something, I'm all in. So I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And then I ended up going to energy healer school. And so I dropped out of grad school and I started going to energy healer school. And while I was in the energy healer school, and I was also doing my IFS training, right? So I was doing energy healing and IFS, and the energy healing was really helping me with like learning and the meditation and yoga and tai chi and qigong and all that. It was helping me really become more somatic, right? Because when you have like a foundation, like a somatic foundation, you can just access self energy so much better. And so it
Mhm.
really supported my IFS work.
Mhm.
So in that meditation school, I met some people who were interested in coaching. Like they were doing the Coaches Training Institute, which is now called the Coactive Institute. And so I started taking coaching classes at the what's now called the Coactive Institute. It's like the largest coaching training institute in the world. And so I took their
Mhm.
whole, coaching program, and then I took an advanced coaching training program with them because at the time they were with the organizational and relationship systems coaching, which is very, very compatible with IFS because it's systems. And so I do have like not one, but two like coaching trainings also in addition to all my IFS training. And so that really opened me up to the world of coaching. And I was like, oh, I could start like doing some IFS coaching, right? So I just very gradually around 2008, I started seeing clients. And then, yeah, I just decided like slowly over time to transition from being a private tutor to being a coach. It took a long time.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, Melissa, I had a very traumatic, upbringing. My parents were very abusive and narcissistic. Um, Now I personally feel they were psychopathic as well, because there was nothing that they were afraid of. They were afraid of only the things they wanted to be afraid of. It was that kind of a situation. And growing up, I was invalidated, dismissed, minimized, gaslit on a regular basis. I mean, I grew up believing that the love language of families like ours, the love language was gaslighting, because
Yep.
it was every now and then it was just gaslighting, no direct communication. They are not expressing things directly. It was very coverted, or high functioning, grandiose. So it was really chaotic. Somehow I moved out and I started working. I got into a lot of things. I was creative, so I explored the hair industry. I did sell paintings for some time. I had to survive because I chose to move out and leave them. And I mean, my studies were also discontinued, but with time, as how I met my, second husband, I mean, who's the actual love of my life. He inspired me to go back to my studies and, get the degrees and, start exploring things which interest me. So, my childhood was one of the most important driving factors in me becoming, a therapist, a coach. I would want to know, I mean, what was your situation? Was it similar or was it different? You had like a stable childhood? I mean, what was it?
No, I mean, my childhood was beyond terrible. I mean, however bad, like, you could possibly imagine, like, truly, I know two other human beings who've had comparable or worse childhoods than me. One is Bob Falconer, really awesome guy, IFS,
Yep.
and he's an expert on unattached burdens, and partly because of his childhood. And I certainly am also an expert on that because of my childhood. So my father was just, I don't think that using the words mother or father, that's gaslighting, right?
Absolutely.
Right. I mean,
Hmm.
and I'm not trying to be funny. You know what I mean? Right. Like, it's really like, no, 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 look, let's not gaslight ourselves. Like, the
So
fundamental
true.
part of a definition of a mother or a father is someone who protects you, right, from predators. If they're the
So true.
predators, then how are they fitting the definition of a parent? They're not. Okay. So I really believe that it's more accurate to say that I was born into captivity, that I was a hostage to two psychopaths. These people were
Oh
just
God.
absolutely, completely psychopaths. My father trafficked me, you know? I mean,
So sorry.
yeah, I mean, I was emotionally, physically, and sexually abused by both of them. And it's that, no, I've done over 8,000 hours of psychotherapy on IFS on myself, right? No one does that level of trauma therapy and continues to do it unless, they have to. I mean, I can't
Mm.
be a functional person unless I continue to unburden, all the atrocities that they committed. It's really, I mean, I'm not going to like go into the details because it's just too horrific and it will create secondary trauma. But I can just say it was,
Mm.
it was not a childhood. It was a captivity. Yeah.
And
So
how was things with your mother?
she's profoundly mentally ill. I mean, first
Oh
of all,
God.
just to be married to a psychopath like that, it's like, you know, she always has sided with him, never with me. So even when uh, I had a confrontation with him when I was 24 and I said, "Hey, I know what you did." And he said, "Oh, your mother and I have known for years you were going to say that." It's like, that's an odd response, but okay. So I stopped talking to my dad, that man, my ex-father, when I was 24. But I had a lot of limerence. I was deeply, I had deep, like a dysfunctional attachment to this woman, and
Mm.
really was deep in the fantasy that she was my mother, like deep in the
Mm.
Disneyland delusion that she was a mother, which is not something that she ever was or was capable of being, but like, I just Stockholm syndromed my way through, you know? And so I stayed in contact with her for many, many years, which was really damaging, I think, to my health and my well being because I was just blended with parts who were in a limerent, who were in that delusion. Like, oh, I'll just try harder. I'll try harder. I'll try harder. I'll try harder. And
Oh God. Mm.
right, there's no there with her. So,
Mm.
like, I'd have experiences where like I'd go to lunch with her. I would be like in full on like mitochondrial dysfunction. Um,
Oh God.
what they call the cell danger response. I mean, it's like, you wouldn't ever say to someone like, "Hey, why don't you have lunch with someone who raped you?" You know what I mean? Like, that's not healthy,
Oh God.
right? So I'm
I'm
sitting
so
there
sorry.
in these
Mm.
parts who are in this fantasy that she's my mother, which is not true. She's my perpetrator. Because look, if you trade in your mom card for a rapist card, hey, it's kind of like it's one or the other, or you can't have both. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm sorry she's so damaged that she did that, but that's not on me, you know? So, but I would try desperately to try to connect with her, and we'd be having lunch, and it would be so bizarre because she wouldn't be there, you know? She's like a sis.
Oh God.
You've had
Hmm.
this experience with your psychopath parents, right? Where like
Hmm.
your little kid parts, your 6-year-olds, your 4-year-olds are desperately trying to get connection, get love, right?
Absolutely. Hmm.
And you're not, they can't, there's no contact available because they're just not there.
So true.
So you cannot get contact. But the crazy thing, I think, is that, I mean, it is a sickness, right? I'm not sitting here in judgment of this woman. Okay, I know she's traumatized. I'm sorry she's traumatized, but I can't take that project on, right? So realistically, like she is sitting there also wanting contact from me, but because she's so sick and damaged, distorted, broken, she's so in her protector parts that she cannot feel contact. She can't, like, there's no self. She has no contact with her own self. And if you have no self, you really can't get a sensation that self to self contact is happening. So she's feeling desperate and sad and like, you know, unhappy because she's feeling like I'm not giving enough. I'm not making her feel contact. Not understanding it's her system that isn't available to receive the love I'm trying to give her. So I try and I try and I try and I try, and she's sitting there going, "Well, when's the next time we can see each other, and why won't you see me more?" And I'm like, "But I'm right. Hello, I'm right here." It's so crazy making to be in the presence of someone who is not there, who you never can do enough for, who feels like you're not loving them enough, you're not giving them enough because they have no capacity to connect or to receive love. And they blame you for it when it's like, it's just, it's not you, like I had to ultimately come to the understanding that I can't have contact with her. She is making me sick. I would literally walk away from those lunches because I would see her like once a year. That's where I got to. I got to very low contact. I would see her once a year. I would have these horrific, you know, like, I mean, I would just be in such a dissociated state and she'd be dissociated and it would just be terrible. And then at the end, I would get sick. I'd literally walk away and have a cold for 3 days.
Oh God.
Nobody has the immune system to like take that hit like every year, knowing it's craziness. So yeah, so I've done a lot of work to shift to understand that's not love, it's limerence. And I can't keep doing that to my parts because it's like choosing her over my parts, and I can't do that.
Absolutely. And, I can totally relate to your experience because I grew up with narcissistic, psychopathic parents. And definitely, I mean, it's disrespect to address them as parents. I often refer, them as egg donors and sperm donors. I mean, people can judge me for that. I hardly care
Right.
because, I mean, my understanding of parent is different. Parents are those who protect you, those who nurture you and give you unconditional love, who
Yeah.
doesn't blackmail you, gaslight you, and then molest you and abuse you and discard you. I don't think that's the job of a parent. So, I mean, we are in a way maligning the term parent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by addressing them, these folks. So, I mean, I used to feel very exhausted because it was almost like, I'm talking to a wall.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, please understand, please understand. No, they are in their own state, in their own world. And I used to experience, this burnout whenever I used to interact with them or whenever I used to communicate with them. And trust me, I mean, Melissa, I mean, you had problem with food. I got into addiction,
Yeah.
substance abuse. And, it was basically, to numb myself, the kind of somatic experiences and feelings that I used to go through after every interaction. I needed an agent, something that can really numb and suppress, and I can just be a moron and do things, and that's it.
Yeah.
Don't go deeper. And the most amazing thing that I have experienced of late is that after continuing my studies and after helping others and working on myself, I never addressed, to the kind of sexual abuse that I was, um, put through by my own mother and uncle. It's only this 6, 7 years that those memories have resurfaced.
Yeah.
I'm doing something and all of a sudden, boom, I'm getting a flashback. Oh
Mm.
shit, this happened with me. And I mean, imagine you are in a kind of a limbo. You're just unaware, working like a zombie, eating, earning money, somehow surviving, but not addressing these parts. I mean, in your term, the parts, those experiences. And I mean, when they come, you are literally, in a kind of a, I would say, a state of a coma. I mean, psychological coma. I mean, I'm not functional. Whenever those memories resurface, it's my personal experience. I'm not functional. I have to literally tell my husband that please guide me out of this. I literally have to write it down and, guide myself out of it because I experienced that and I had been avoiding it and numbing myself. Now I'm no more into addiction. All of it is resurfacing. It's like a flare up.
Yeah.
And then again, I'm getting the same symptoms like IBS or, muscle tension, palpitation. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. I was diagnosed with POTS. I mean, all sorts of crazy things. And every time I have noticed, I mean, what you have mentioned, every time I interact with such individual, even though I don't know that they are crazy in the head, they are narcissistic, but trust me, my body gives me signals. It
Yeah.
gives me, all of those sensations which I used to have earlier. And now I can relate that our body is such an intelligent machine. It
Mhm.
literally, gives out those alarms that just run. This is not for you. Even though that person is not saying, I personally feel our body is quite intelligent. I mean, we often, dismiss it that no, I mean, this might be wrong. I mean, that's a wrong gut feeling. But trust me, your gut is always right.
I totally agree. Yeah.
And also, I would want to add something over here, Melissa. I was, very much in this state of limerence. I wanted things to work out somehow or the other. My mother passed away, in an accident, and I was mourning her death. And now, when I look back, after all those memories have resurfaced, now when I look back, I was mourning the mother that I never had. I was not mourning that lady. I
Yeah.
was mourning and missing that mother figure that I was craving, that inner child in me was craving. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I was quite, into that state of limerence. I was, looking out for closure, looking out for replacement, some mother figure, or maybe, talk things out with my sister, with my father, and make things work out. But trust me, if your body gives those signals, just run. There is nothing that you can do. I personally feel you can't make things work out. You can't, use gray rock boundary. I personally, I mean, I shouldn't be saying this, but all these are crappy things. I mean, from
Right.
my own personal standpoint and experience, because I see a lot of people, suggesting gray rock, pink rock, red rock, use this boundary. No, these. I mean, I'm sorry for my language. These assholes are next level crazy individuals. They will just run over you. They just don't care. I mean, they don't understand what boundary is. That's the kind of entitled mindset they are, born with. So it's all about them, their way, and that's it. Now, Melissa, a lot of people, I mean, let's start off with limerence and love, through the IFS lens. Melissa, I have observed that a lot of people confuse limerence with love
Yeah.
because both can feel so consuming. But when we look at IFS invites us to look at these experiences as parts within us rather than absolute truth. Now, I would want to know from an IFS perspective, how can we begin to differentiate between what is authentic love and limerence? If you could simplify and, tell us.
So, starting out with a super quick overview of IFS, right? You have,
Mhm.
I like to think of IFS like really basically as a equilateral triangle upside down. So you have the protectors at the top, you've got managers and firefighters, and then the exiles at the bottom. Okay. So the exiles are the parts we're trying to protect. And then the managers are parts who, and exiles are our, like, our inner children. And they, when they get hurt, they carry negative beliefs and feelings about themselves, like I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I suck, whatever, right? Those feelings are painful, and they can be so painful that really, like, we can't function, like you said, right? Believe
Mhm.
I know. So the managers and the firefighters, when these feelings get triggered, they kind of come up like flames, the managers try to proactively keep us from getting triggered in the first place. So like, say you have a family member who's always going to criticize you. Managers go, we don't need to call her. Don't pick up the phone. Like just avoid, right? So that's the proactive way to keep the exiles from being triggered, which honestly is a very effective strategy, especially when you have a lot of very delicate exiles. You want to stay away from people who will add more burdens to your already overflowing pool of burdens, So like good managers who say, don't pick up the phone, listen to them. Protectors are not always like crazy. You know what I mean? They're there for a reason. So like we have to honor that sometimes our protectors are helping us get through the day with all this trauma. So managers are proactive protectors. And then firefighters are reactive protectors. Once the exiles get triggered, right? Which they will, like say that relative calls you and you pick up the phone and then they talk and then they say some shit about you and you're like, like, so then now you're all triggered, right? So then the firefighters are like, okay, addiction, right? Now we're going to do something to dissociate, to numb, pleasure, zone out, right? We're going to watch 5 episodes of Netflix. We're going to, on the low end, right? We're going to eat some brownies. We're going to, smoke some pot. If you get further and further out, you're going to shoot some heroin. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, so this triangle that I'm talking about here, I believe that the reason why it's an equilateral triangle, okay, is because however far down your exiles are is how far out your managers and firefighters are going to be. So that gives us X-ray vision into other people's systems, because however far out their managers and firefighters are, which is behavior and speech that we can hear and see, we will know how far down their exiles are, okay? So like if you have friends and, their firefighters are like watching a little bit of Netflix and eating like, a pint of ice cream, okay, all right, that's how far out their managers are. That's how far down their exiles are, okay? But if like they're out here and they're smoking like pot every single day, all day, they're further out, right? That's like more and then therefore, okay, down here, the exiles are down further, okay? And then if the person is like, I can't even put it in the screen, right? Like so far that they're shooting heroin, okay, then their exiles are way down there, okay? You have X-ray vision, they have a lot of trauma, okay? So IFS is a system, internal family systems, right? By their protectors, you will know their exiles. So that tells you how extreme someone's firefighters and managers are, tells you how extreme their exiles are. So that's the overall, system of parts, right? And so the protectors are trying to protect the exiles. The thing is, like, they're little kid parts too. Managers and firefighters are little kids, exiles are little kids. That's all our little kids. And when they're running the show, they drive our bus over the cliff, basically. What we need is something that's not parts. That's the self. That's like our true, more like adult, centered, true self, whatever you want to call it, right? That's going to go to these parts and try to like bring some moderation or some mediation or some compassion or some presence to the whole situation, right? To help all the parts kind of get along, because you can't have 7-year-olds running your life. So that's IFS in a nutshell. Now, one of the beliefs of all parts, this is not just exiles. I used to think it was only exiles, but it's not. It's all parts. Is that it's bad math. It's bad algebra. Okay, so this belief is that if I had a -10, like say, my parents were neglectful and they never listened to my feelings, right? Okay, so like I cried. They were like, oh, don't be a crybaby, right? Okay, so that's like a -10, right? So then what the exiles and the whole system will believe, the bad math, it's totally erroneous. It is not true. But what they believe is if I go get somebody, preferably somebody who looks like actually or seems like energetically like that parent, right? And I go get the redeemer, the person who's going to like look kind of like my parent, but who's going to be nice to me, and not like neglect or undermine me. And they're they treat me positively, they're going to be the positive 10 that's going to even out the negative 10, and then I'm going to feel better, right? Managers are always telling exiles, oh, if you just get any positive 10, because it could be the redeemer person, it could be success. If you're successful in the world, people will see that we're so great and we're so smart. If you feel stupid, we'll get you a degree, and then you'll have letters after your name, and then you'll feel smart, won't you? And they try to feed the exiles that, right? Like a mama bird, feeding the baby bird, like the BA or the BS or the PhD or whatever it is, right? Just eat that, you'll feel smart, And meanwhile, the exiles are like, I still feel stupid. And then the managers are like, what the? I just got a PhD for you. What do you want from me? Like, you know what I mean? So they're always trying to feed the exiles the positive experience, but it does not heal that negative 10 or negative 100 or negative 1,000, whatever, because it's bad math. People are not algebra. You can't fix a negative with a positive. Okay? It will not work. I don't care how much positive you throw in there. You can throw it in and throw it in forever. It won't work. Okay? The only solution is grief. You have to go to the exiles, and you have to, from self, because managers and firefighters can't do it. Protectors can't do it. It's way out of their wheelhouse. Okay? It's beyond their pay grade. All right? Only the self can sit with the exiles and really witness how bad it was and say, you know what? I can sit and grieve with you that you did not get, the love that you really deserve and how bad it hurt. And I can be with you through the pain so that you can grieve it, because grieving is healing, right? It's like you got a wound. Like every time your parents said, oh, just, don't be a crybaby. It's like they just stabbed you with a knife and you have another little, stab wound in your leg, right? And I don't care, how many pairs of roller skates or like how many nice pairs of pants or how many PhDs you get. How is that fixing the stab wound in your leg, which has been festering for 20 years, right? It's not going to fix it. You got to take those pants off or whatever, you got to go to that stab wound. You got to say, hey, I really see that this really hurt. Let's grieve it. Let's air it out. Let's clean it out. Does it feel good to clean it out? No, it does not. But that's what we got to do, right? So I'm going to witness your pain, and witnessing the pain of the exiles is the process of grieving the initial, injury. It's really memory work. It's going back to what did it really feel like? What were the beliefs you got from it? Like, let's really be in that memory. Let's really clean it out. Like let's get the, hydrogen peroxide. Okay, it's bubbling. It hurts. It's nasty. I can sit with you this. I can clean it out. And once you clean it out, that's the grieving process, right? That's unburdening. Then, oh my gosh, you don't need to go running around trying to get this good thing, that good thing, this good thing, right? Because it's healed. That is healing at the root. And that's what IFS helps people do. And limerence is another way of like understanding limerence is the longing for the redeemer who's going to give me the plus 10, right? That it will never work. That's like an addiction to getting a positive to try to cover up the negative. You just say, no, it won't work. So let's like face the longing. Like a big piece of IFS work for me lately has been really being with my longing part. So we're like, I want it, I want it, I want it, I want it. And being able to withstand the longing, because that's tough. Okay. In the process of working with limerence, you have to, so much of IFS work is the self, right? Being able to withstand the storm and the physical discomfort of the feelings of the exiles, whether it's anger, sadness, fear, or longing. Those are like some of the top 4 feelings you have to learn how to just can stay with. Like, I really hear you want to get like, and the firefighters and managers will get on with the project too. So you gotta deal with everybody, right? The exiles will be like, but we want a boy, like he'll make us feel better. They want a redeemer, right? Like love, right? And you know what I mean? And then the firefighters are like, we can get online. We can get on the, the Onion, or we can get on some personals, and we can start clicking and clicking, right? Like, you know what I mean? We can go pick off the man tree. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, guys, everybody, self energy. We are not doing that. Okay, so I hear that that's what you want, but I want to hear why. What's the longing? Like, what's underneath the longing, right? Because when you get underneath this whole dynamic, it's that longing for the Redeemer. Why? Because there's an injury. There's like that grief that I didn't get it. Well, let's heal what you didn't get instead of going out to try to get it, which you'll never fix the problem. Okay, that was a lot. What's coming up?
Now, and I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, how would you, differentiate, I mean, authentic love and limerence? If you could
Limerence
simplify. Yeah.
is longing for the Redeemer, right? Like the person who's going to give me the thing I didn't get. And it comes from parts. And it has like a certain kind of the more you I feel like the more I work with limerence, the more I start to learn I think it can be very subtle at first. Like you're like, no, I really want this. Like it's so compelling, but that's kind of a little bit of like a uh-oh. Like if it's very intense, like there's a saying that if it's urgent, it comes from parts. Like there's this incredible urgency. Like I have to have it, like a graspiness, that's
Hmm.
often a sign of limerence versus love, which is just like so much more casual. I mean, it's really, another way to describe the self is that self is love, right? It's not one of the C words like Richard Schwartz has these 8 C words for self, which are like the self is calm, creative, connected, compassionate, courageous, confident, um, all these different C words, right? Like, but really the self is loving. That's what it is. It's present, it's patient, it's just like spacious. It's not judging, right? And that's what love is. And love brings your nervous system, it regulates you. Whereas limerence is drama, intensity, urgency, addiction, grasping, right? So it just has a much more like edgy energy. Limerence is much more edgy and love is much calmer. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Melissa, IFS talks about exiles carrying the burdens of
Mhm.
unmet needs, shame, or even abandonment.
Mhm.
Do you see limerence as often, being fueled by exile paths, searching for attachment or healing through another person?
For sure. I mean, I think that's really the core of the limerence is the longing, you know? Like I really feel that the seed of limerence is longing for being filled, longing for contact,
To
connection,
belong.
right? Longing. Like,
Mm.
I mean, I just feel like my exiles have carried radioactive longing. Like they will just whine, I mean, with love, right? But they will just be like, "How bad is this? I want it." And I'm like, I really hear how bad you want it. I really hear that. And I with deep, deep love, I can just sit with you in your intense longing, which like could make sometimes I feel like it's gonna burn me to the ground, this longing. It's so intense. They're like they're like, no, 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 you're bad because I want to go to the managers. They're gonna get me, what I want. You're not getting me what I want. Or I'm gonna go to the firefighters. Like, look, I need a boyfriend, okay? I need love. Okay, I hear that that's what you say you need. I hear you. I am hearing you. And I'm telling you right now, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're going to sit with this longing. Okay. And I want to hear what's underneath it. No, I just need a boyfriend. That's what I need. Okay. I really hear that. I really do. And I want to hear a little bit more about that. And I just stay in my curiosity. I just stay with, like, you tell me more about that. I don't care. They'll tell me, I'm going to kick you. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to chop your head off. I don't care. Okay. Me personally, everybody has a different way of visualizing the self. You know what I mean? Richard Schwartz says one thing about the self is that if you see the self, you're not really in self because you should be in the self, seeing your parts. Does that make sense? And if you see the
Hmm.
part with the self, like two people, like two characters, and then you're outside of it, you're probably in another part that's seeing the self. Does that make sense? Okay.
Mm.
So there's a way that the self is kind of invisible. And the way I kind of think of the self as like when I am in self is that I'm like in Harry Potter with an invisibility cloak.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
kind of invisible. And so if
Mhm.
my parts say, I'm going to kick you, I'm like, go ahead, because I'm invisible. So you can just kick right through me. I don't care. Okay. So sometimes parts get so mad at you because you refuse to give them what they want in this limerent, desire, this longing. I got to have it. And it's like, okay, but I can handle that. So go ahead and kick me. And then they're very aggravated because, like, I kicked through you. Ah, you're so annoying. It's like when parts are able to tell you that they're mad at you and they hate you, that's actually a good sign because it means that they feel safe enough to tell you that. So, um, yeah, I mean, and exiles aren't the only ones because they will try to get the managers and firefighters to go along with their project, whatever it is. I mean, my parts also get limerences around events. Like, oh, if I go to this
Mhm.
event, that'll be like the most fun thing in the world. And I just got to go to that. And that'll be like so great. It could be nostalgia. Like, for instance, like say I used to go to a lot, I've done like 2,350 hours of IFS training, right? So I used to go to like every IFS workshop I could. I used to go to Kripalu, right? Every summer there's an IFS workshop at Kripalu, but it's for beginners, okay? And at a certain point, after I've done 13 level threes, right? Maybe that's not really the best matchup for me. You know what I'm saying? And it's no shade on that workshop, right? It's just that the level I'm doing IFS at and like the level of beginners, it's not, doesn't match. And my parts, like the last time I went, like they're just kind of like the complexity and dynamism and like kind of radical level of IFS that I'm doing. It's not matching where the other people there are. It's just not matching. Okay. And then their parts will be triggered by me, by how I'm doing IFS, right? Which is fine. You know what I mean? No, like harm or shame. But my parts have this nostalgia. They're like, no, it healed us so much. And it was like the greatest thing. So we have to go. We have to go. And I'm like, we outgrew it and I can't go anymore because the last time I went, we got actually injured by other people's parts. Right. So I have to make like an adult, mature decision about like where I can be safe and where I can't. Right. Even though my parts have this limerence, they have this intense nostalgia that like, no, that's the place to go. I'm like, I can't spend my money and time and energy going somewhere that I no longer actually belong, right? I can't do that. So you can hate me, you can kick me, you can cry. We will go through the grief process because they're grieving the fact that it just doesn't work anymore. And that's like so much of the thing is like we have to grieve that it doesn't work for us to like our exiles or our parts, our little kids, they think this person or this place is going to give us what we need, but the self knows, no, it will not. Like, we can't keep going to people like our ex parents, right? Our sperm donor and egg donor, whatever you want to call them. We cannot go to people who do not have any self energy to offer. And I'm not judging them, okay? This is not about they're bad people. I mean, you can say, what do you want? I mean, a lot of times they're criminals, but like, hey, all I'm saying is I am not going to allow you to keep going to a place where you get hurt, right? At a certain point, no. So as much as you're crying, as much as you're longing, as much as you're like, I'll try, I'll do my best, I'll do better, I'll work harder, because that's what the managers say, right? Managers tell exiles, they're like, just try harder, walk on eggshells more, like fit in, like just don't be authentic, be what they need you to be, so that then you will get the connection we want. No, I'm not doing that. That is not a self-led way to live your life. Okay. I have to be authentic, be who I am. And if I don't belong and I'm not accepted and I'm not seen and I'm not connected to just as I am, because I am okay, then I'm not going to that place to get connection. I'm not doing it. Because if I do, right, when I try to be the person they want me to be, like this tiny little, like, one, like, square millimeter by millimeter, like, of who I truly am, right? Because that's all a narcissist is going to let me be. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Right? I can't feel my exiles won't even get what they want anyway. That's the thing, right? They're like, I want them to love me. It's like, you will not feel loved unless you can show up wholly as you are and be loved for who you are. But I cannot be loved for who I am by that person, in that environment, by that institution, in that training, by that teacher. Like, it's not happening. So I don't care how much you whine and you long and you go, oh, I don't care. I know better. I'm not doing it because I do know the difference between limerence, your longing to get connection from a place that cannot give it to you. And I won't let you do that anymore. So I'm going to, you know what? I'm holding out for real love, not limerence. And you can whine all you want, but we're not going.
Mm-hmm.
Just going to
True.
I'm just going to like stay and stay. And it just, the more you say no, the more it pushes and pushes and pushes and pushes until all the burdens come out, and grief and grief and grief and grief. And then, like, I mean, I had these processes where, you know, my parts were like whining and whining and whining. I want to go to Kripalu. I want to go to Kripalu. Okay, so just tell me more. And they grieve and they cry and they're sad and they grieve and they cry and they're sad and they grieve and they're crying and they're sad. And sometimes it takes 6 months. You know, it's a long process. But at the end of it, you know, August comes around, which is when Kripalu, you know, usually that's when the workshop is. And I kind of don't even remember that it even happened because I cleared
Wow.
it out, and then the parts are not longing for it. And they're like, oh yeah, we wanted to go there, but then we don't want to go anymore because they get to the bottom of it and they understand it didn't work the last time I went. I got really injured. We really healed the injuries, and now we're at peace with the reality that that no longer fits for me. And that's the key thing, right? Limerence is actually this object of desire just does not meet my needs, and it doesn't fit for me. And even a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old part, if you do the process, you just do IFS with them and you keep going in deeper and deeper and unburdening and unburdening and unburdening, they can get it. They can come to peace with it. They really can. Mm-hmm. And then you unravel the limerence at the root, and then it's gone. It's incredible. And the freedom, when you really unravel a particular limerence and it's just gone, is like, that is one of the best feelings. Like, that is some of the deepest IFS liberation I've ever experienced, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Melissa, when limerence takes over, I mean, it's only a couple of years that I was exposed to this term, limerence, after I, read a book by Dorothy Tenner, who first coined this term, limerence.
Mm-hmm.
I personally feel when limerence takes over, people are, very obsessive in that state. They're very obsessive, compulsive, anxious, out of control. And I mean, if we view things through the IFS framework, I mean, I personally feel it's the protector parts that's taking charge. I mean, that's how I see, that obsession, anxiousness, out of control. Now I would want to know, Melissa, how do protectors like managers or firefighters show up in, the dynamics of limerence, and how do they keep people locked in unhealthy cycles?
Well, I really think you can't look at protectors without thinking about the exiles, because, like, it's the exiles going like, I want it, and like being like little birds, like, like, feed me, like they want something. And managers and firefighters, I mean, just in my own personal work with my managers and firefighters, it is incredible how loyal they are to the exiles. They're like, I really, within reason, I will try to do anything I can to get you what you need, or even like outside of reason, right? Like, it's like when the exiles say jump, the protectors kind of are like, how high? You know what I mean? Or like when exiles are suffering, it's like paramedics want to come to the scene of like a crash. You know what I mean? They're like, oh my God, there's a crash. Like, let me come. And so it's really hard to say to a manager or a firefighter, like, hey guys, I understand the exile's really suffering right now, but can you please let me handle it, not you? Because the managers and firefighters are often trapped in the past where they think you're 6, you're 7, you're 8, you're 2, whatever, where there wasn't any self to help, right? And they were the only paramedics. They were the only ones that could, do anything they could to not just make you completely lose your mind, right? Like completely melt down from all the trauma, right? So like the reason managers and firefighters do what they do, and they're so compulsive and urgent and intense and whacked out, is because in the past they had to be. That was their only possible solution to the problem of what was going on with the exiles, right? So like when you're 7 and you're being molested, like you can't begin to remember that. You literally will just die. You can't handle it. So the managers just create amnesia and like forget everything.
Mm.
And so now it's like they just want to do the same thing. So like if you have, say your exiles like fall in love with some dumbass guy who, no offense, but like is just like narcissistic, just because you have that compulsion to like repeat, to look for a redeemer, to look for someone who has a similar energy, right? And get a different response. And it's like, okay, that's probably like, you can just tell that's a setup for a bad situation. Because if you are attracted to that similar energy, you're probably going to get that similar energy. But then like when that narcissistic person that you have set your energy on, right? Your exiles are all like, oh, I love him. Oh, he looks like my dad, whatever. Okay. Then when that guy treats you badly, or he has parts that of course are similar because you already were attracted to that similar energy, right? And then he does similar stuff. The managers do the same protective thing they did like in your adult life that they did in your childhood life, right? They just go, oh no, it wasn't that bad, or he didn't mean it. Don't pay attention to that, right? So they do the same protective thing in your adult life that they were doing in your childhood life. And it's really hard for the self to get in there and to go, hey, wait a minute. It's not cool what he's doing. Like we need to be able to see that there's some bad things about this guy, right? But here's the problem. If you start to see the bad things that he's doing right now in the present, you will see the bad things that your parents did in the past. Because it is a swinging door. The present is always a swinging door to the past. You cannot put some different hinge on that door. You can't see only what's in the present, but not have it go to the past. It will always swing from the present to the past. And so, like, this is a weird little dynamic, right? Where exiles seek out people with similar energy to your abusers, right? So then you bring that person into your life. And then your protectors do the same pattern that they did when you were a kid to hide that abuse from you. But then it's like pushing you to want to the more abused you get in the present, right? The more it pushes and pushes and pushes until finally it's like you've got to see some of it, right? But when you start to see the abuse in the present, it swings back and then you start to see the abuse in the past. And that's how, I don't know, it's like exquisite design or something, right? That is one of the ways that we use abusive relationships in the present to start to chip into and chip away at our denial about the abuse we experienced in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Melissa, you talked about the protectors, and you said that, it blurs things, it helps you forget, it creates that amnesia sort of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of a protector are those parts if they are not awakening me and, helping me fight for myself and end the misery rather than suppressing. So why do, I mean, this is just a normal question that just struck me. Why do I have to call those parts as protectors? Because all what they are doing is creating a smoke screen. I mean, making me forget things, and then again, in a way enabling, the other, individual. I mean, that's how I see, I mean, through, the lens of a, survivor of narcissistic abuse. So protector is not actually protecting me, it's just helping me forget. So why do I call that part protector, if you could shine some light?
Yeah, because this has to do with like profound compassion for the healing process. So I
Mm-hmm.
really deeply believe that healing is a privilege. Not everyone is in a position where they can walk away from their abuse,
Mm-hmm.
you know? I mean, if you're 16 and or 14 or 12, even if you do wake up and realize, my parents are really narcissistic. Well, good luck with that. I mean, is there like the fairyland, place where you can go to get away from these parents? I mean, let's think about this for a second. Foster care? Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
30% of 18-year-olds, right, who age out of foster care, okay, they end up dead in prison or addicted, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the foster care system is more abusive than, like, it's a really scary system, right? So, kids know that paradoxically, the people by and large who are, despite the fact that, I mean, both of us know our biological parents were atrocious, but it's highly likely that like our non-biological parents are even going to be more atrocious, which is really troubling.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard that like the number one risk factor for child abuse is a non-biological parent, right? That's the top risk factor for abuse of a child is a step parent. That's not a good, you know what I mean? That's not good math here, right? So like the kids don't have good options. This is not a joke. And kids know that if I don't bond to the people that my survival depends on, I could die, right? So I think, we always talk about the jobs of like managers and firefighters have the job of protecting, but I think that exiles also have a job. I think their job is bonding. I think their job for many, not all, but many exiles, they really have to do a job like a Academy Award winning job of Stockholm syndrome or trauma bonding to people that aren't,
Mm-hmm.
you know, lovable. But if
Mm-hmm.
survival depends on it, okay, I'm going to love this person. I'm going to try to get them to, take care of me best I can by attaching to them, right? Because that's the fawn response. Yeah. So a lot of exiles have to just fawn and attach to people that are really bad attachment figures because they have no other option. And then the whole system has to work to help that happen. And so the managers and firefighters protect the exiles from knowing the truth about these terrible, abusers by amnesia and dissociating and addictions, like whatever it takes to just get you through this relationship that's horrible, but it's the only relationship you have. And I mean, honestly, if it's versus relationship, a terrible relationship versus no relationship, a terrible relationship is a better option because abuse is less damaging than neglect.
Mm-hmm.
Abuse is less damaging than neglect. So when you
Mm-hmm.
have nothing, right, that is like the total emptiness. And that's like neglect or abandonment, right? That's actually more harmful than abuse. I can see that in my own life story because I don't think that my ex mother was as horrifically like tortured and abused as I was. I mean, I don't know, all the details, but I just don't. It seems improbable, but you never know. but I know she was abandoned. Her father abandoned her when she was 2, and then her stepfather abandoned her when she was 7. And so I think that like abandonment and neglect actually is more harmful and more likely to create like, you know, cluster B personality disorders, narcissism, psychopathy, you know, borderline, whatever you want to
Mm.
call it. Like it's actually more likely because it's so relationally destructive when there's nothing to relate to. Like there's nothing, you know? The nothingness is actually worse than like a bad something. Nothing is worse than a bad something. And so our
Mhm.
whole system will try to stay in connection, even with a terrible abuser, because that's better than nothing. That's better than abandonment. And then, so our protectors are just, they are protecting us from abandonment and nothing. And so that's why they are protectors. Even though as adults, it's true that this, like the protectors, you know, keeping all this information from us feels like, oh my God, why are you, you know, you're ruining my life now. You know what I mean? It's not true.
Mm.
Because I will also say, I think for a lot of people, like there's a part who says something like, okay, you managers and firefighters who are like, you're doing these addictive behaviors, you know, you're having amnesia. It's like you're choosing the abuser over me. Oh my God, you're making me crazy, right? But if they actually stop doing the jobs that they're doing, like tomorrow, like completely, we would go poof, because we'd be overwhelmed with the trauma. It would be too much at one time. And so part of what they're doing, I think, is protecting us from like the the dazzling horror, the immensity of the horror of what happened to us, and they're titrating it, right? They're protecting us from the fullness of how terrible it is. And they're honestly, when I feel like as I work with my protectors to unburden, right, over time, they will let go if they trust that I can handle it. So the more that we do IFS and the more that we come into our like, you know, integrated, aligned, like adult self, and we show them I can handle the trauma, the more they'll let it go. But they can't let it go all at once. And so we do still need like that titration, that protection as we do the work so that our heads just don't blow up.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
what I understand, I mean, with whatever you have said just now, what I understand is that protectors are not literal protectors. They are not saviors or they are not rescuers, of a rescue mission. All what they do is, make things more doable and bearable, make you a
Terrible.
better survivor so that you can keep moving on in life.
Yep.
But, I hope I'm understanding it right,
Yeah, I think
whatever you have said.
they're helping us be better survivors. And like we're
Mm,
just slowly moving from survivors to, you know, thrivers, right? Like we're just
mm,
slowly like, you know, you just can't go from like having just a literally a decade or 2 decades of trauma to then suddenly, oh,
mm,
now I'm just all perfect. You know what I mean? Like, no, because there's just an avalanche of horrible information, somatic, like really terrible trauma that you have to metabolize. And we can't eat that all at once. So our
mm,
protectors are just making sure that we just like, okay, we do this. Okay, now I'll take a little more off. Okay, now I'll take a little more off. Okay, I'll take a little more protection off. And we just do it like that so that we eat it in like, you know, bite-sized pieces. I mean, like you said, you know, when you're getting memories back, right? When you're triggered, when
mm.
stuff comes up, your fibromyalgia flares up and your, you know, this flares up and that flares up. I mean,
Oh,
I can't sleep, right? Well, and that's just like a little tiny piece that we're working on, right? And if that's how dysregulated we get with a little tiny piece, we can't ask them to let go of more. Otherwise, what? You know, I mean, we just be just totally dysfunctional. So, you know,
yeah, it makes sense.
yeah. So
Mhm,
they're protecting us along the way, and just slowly, like as we peel the onion, they're like, okay, can you handle it? Okay, we'll take a little more. Okay, can you handle it? Let's take a little more. Okay, you know, just slowly, slowly, you know, metabolizing the trauma and grieving it. You can't grieve everything all at once every day. You know, you just have to like do a little bit, and you're basically balancing. Can I be like functional for most of the day, and then can I do some of this trauma work, which is going to dysregulate me. And like, they're trying to keep you in homeostasis so that you can, live a reasonable adult life while also still metabolizing the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Melissa, for many survivors of narcissistic or toxic or emotionally available parents, limerence, I mean, I personally have seen limerence becomes, a kind of a reenactment of childhood longings. They
Mhm.
keep, replaying and, keep longing, in their adult life as well.
Yeah.
I would want to know, how does IFS allow us to trace limerence back to early attachment wounds and unmet needs, from the family system? If you could, you know, share your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, like the example of, well, I'll give an example of a limerence with a guy a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he looked like my dad. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're all walking, stereotypes, right? So like that's so common, right? Okay. So this guy looks like my dad. And so my parts are like, oh, he's so sexy, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this individual was not an appropriate, like he just wasn't an appropriate object of a crush on any level. I mean, literally on no level was he. I mean, he's a nice guy, but, like not, he was younger, way younger than me. He was not really emotionally available. Like I'm a pretty, emotionally sophisticated person. He wasn't. Like that would never even remotely work out. You know what I mean? Like all this different stuff, right? But my parts are like, ah, they were really crushing hard. Okay, like full on 10 out of a 10. Okay, like intense. So I mean, in my IFS work with this limerence that just came up like a fire right from my exiles. I said, okay, guys, like let's work on like what is it about him, that really like what do you, what's going on? So I just got really curious, and I had to sit with that fire. I really had to sit in the fire of the desire because it was really, really intense. I really had to actually kind of sit on my firefighters who really wanted to say something, make some move, something, like, oh my Lord, like, no, we're not doing that. And just like working it, just actually doing IFS sessions with these exiles. And then just by getting curious, you can follow the trailhead of like that limerence. Like limerence is a trailhead. Longing is a trailhead. It's something you can begin an IFS session with so that you can just get curious and keep asking the parts questions. And then as you ask the questions, then things come up. And it would like, it churned up like all this stuff, like stuff from like past relationships, stuff from my, my childhood. It just kept churning stuff up, churning stuff up. And I just kept witnessing, working with it, unburdening it, witnessing, being in the fire. And so you just do the IFS process just like you would with anything else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Melissa, we don't just carry individual parts. We carry other, parts as well. Our culture, I mean, I have observed it in a way romanticizes obsession. I mean, in a lot of cases I've seen they romanticize, they often, tell you, oh, she cannot live without you, or he cannot live without you, you cannot live without them. Come on, you need to go back, you need to make things work out. So I would want to know, how do cultural and collective parts feed into the limerence cycle, and how can IFS help us unblend from those, toxic dysfunctional narratives? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it makes me think about just patriarchy in general and how women
Mm,
are really like, Disneyified, like Sleeping Beauty and you know what I mean? Like,
mm,
oh, the Prince Charming is gonna come and he's gonna rescue you and he's gonna
yeah.
save you, like that's such a strong patriarchal discourse. And I honestly think that some of the work for me personally that helps me, like we're both on Substack, and women sharing their stories and sharing like real statistics and real information, like just educating yourself culturally as a feminist, can be really helpful to just keep unlatching all these cultural burdens and cultural myths, right? You know what I mean? Like, who's that woman, Zon on Substack, and Villain, whatever her name is, and she talks about, like, hey, like 1/3 of men, like say that they would coercively control a woman in a relationship, right? Like she talks a lot about this, just the statistics of how difficult it is to actually find someone, who is a safe partner, that women are not crazy when we say, look, I try to go out and like find somebody to date, but I am failing, right? And instead of thinking I have a broken picker or I have more therapy to do, which, okay, sure, like the more therapy I do, the better I get at, discerning who is or isn't safe, right? But the reality is that patriarchy has peed in the pool, okay? Like patriarchy, unfortunately, has, basically patterned men and women or just people in general, right, with certain beliefs about relationships where, women have this Disneyland thing like, oh, I want a Prince Charming, right? And then their exiles believe that ideology and then they like go out into the world to try to get that rescuer. And that is like not a good place to come from when it comes to finding a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, I mean, guys are like also acculturated to believe, oh, I'm supposed to be the white knight. I'm supposed to be the guy that like just sacrifices and like, like rescues women. And then that's a set
Mm-hmm.
too, because it's like a lock and a key, right? Like the little girl parts who are looking for the Prince Charming and the little boy parts who want to be Prince Charming get together and nobody's being authentic. Nobody's in self, right? And then the guys are like stewing in resentment because they're like not speaking their own needs in the relationship. Like patriarchy undermines us both, okay? It does not help anybody. In addition, like Terry Real talks about how men are not really like getting a lot of practice relationally, like to do like deep emotional like work on themselves or to be like relationally to be relational basically. Like our culture is still raising boys to like don't cry, don't feel your emotions, toughen up, whatever, right? And then as a result, as adults, these boys grow into men who feel entitled to women's emotional labor, who don't have emotional skills, and then like fail in relationships, you know? Up to 70% of marriages, right, like are ended by women. Women divorce men, right? They're the instigators of divorce around 70% of the time. Why? Why is it a 70-30 split? Because women are just like, I can't take it anymore. I can't do the emotional labor. You don't have emotional skills. I'm sick of this crap, right? I'm sick of patriarchy, blah, blah. So, Terry Real says, look, patriarchy is not helping any of us. This cultural legacy burden of patriarchy is not setting men and women up to have mutually fulfilling, emotionally skilled relationships. And so, I mean, like women, I think for women, we need to, do the work to like get clear that I can't do all that emotional labor. I can't accept patriarchy and patriarchal like conditions in my relationships. And then men need to rehabilitate, get some emotional skills, right? And unlearn that I'm entitled to, excess emotional or domestic labor, right? So all of us have work to do. But for sure, I think that some of that cultural work around patriarchy helps to release us from those cultural burdens and just literally like studying and reading and doing work with parts around it really helps. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, I mean, based on your experience and exposure, to different workshops, related to IFS and your experience and knowledge, um, do you think unattached burdens are also responsible for creating this state that we know as limerence?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would say that they contribute because, like, however you want to call them, demons, unattached burdens, like just,
Mm,
negative cultural energies that get into you, they are like these little succubus, they get into your system and they want to just I don't know, like they want to mess you up. They don't want you to be empowered. They don't want you to be in self. And anything that diminishes your capacity to be in self adds to your capacity to be in parts, right?
mhm,
So they encourage parts to be crazy, you know? And the more we clear out all the burdens, whatever they are, cultural burdens, personal burdens, legacy burdens, whatever it is, the more we clear them out, and that's the more we actually embody self, the more we're able to withstand the winds and the intensity and the urgency and the like addictiveness of limerence and just say no, you know what, that's a delusion. Because I think a key thing that we need to remember about is that limerence is a lie. Okay, it's a delusion, right? It's a projection out into the world that this person, this thing, it's like the holy grail. It's like, oh, it's the amazing thing. I have to have it. I have to have it. It's like, no, that's Disneyland. You have created, right, this complete like fantasy. It's not true. And I want to sit with you and get really curious about what is this fantasy. One of the ways I work with limerence is this really reminds me is my parts would say to me, I have to go to this conference. I have to go. It's the thing. It's going to be so great. I'm going to meet all the great people. I'm going to have all the great experiences. It's going to be perfect. I'm like, okay, all right, okay, I hear you. I know, okay. Sarah, I'm here to tell you that is a lie. This is a limerence. It is a fantasy, okay? It's based on nostalgia. It's based on projections. It's delusional, okay? I know this for sure. But you can't tell your parts. You can't tell a 3-year-old you're delusional. You know what I mean? Like nobody got over a delusion in the history of delusions by someone saying you're delusional. You know what I'm saying? Like that doesn't work.
mhm,
So, no, I sit there and I go, okay, this is a technique that I use where how in IFS you go to a past memory, right? And you
mhm,
really feel it, you see it, you smell it, you hear it, you're like really in it, and that's how you move through it and you process it, right? Like that's witnessing. That is the witnessing phase of the IFS process. You can do the same thing with a limerence, okay, about a future event. So, you know what I mean? Like you can do it with the past where you go really deep into that past memory. But I also will sit really deeply with the part and go, tell me what it's like to walk down the hall of the conference. Like, let's really be there. Like, I'm going to give you full permission to really totally like be in this delusion, in this fantasy. Okay. Tell me what it's like. Tell me what it's giving you. Tell me why you really want it. What are you experiencing? And 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, my parts start to go, yeah, well, but there's this person I run into and they're mean to me. And I'm like, oh, like, I mean, there's another part of me that's like, oh, yeah, I knew that would happen. But, I don't say that, right? I just go, tell me more about that. What's that like? They're like, well, I want to go, but then this person will be mean to me because I know they're going to be there and then I'm going to be unhappy. And I'm like, well, tell me more about that. And so that's where you help the parts step out of the fantasy and into the reality by really letting them dilate on and really be in the reality of the fantasy. Like, you know what I mean? Paradoxically,
mhm.
them experience the reality of the fantasy and suddenly they start to see, uh-oh, there are things about the fantasy that I was kind of not seeing. Like the same thing with this guy that I had the limerence with. I was like, okay, so what if we did kiss him? They're like, then, um, um, well, but
Mm.
he isn't really fully present. I'm like, oh, well, how will that feel? Well, but he looks so good, but then if I kissed him then and then he wasn't present, I would feel sad. Like, oh, you would? Yeah. And so by allowing, like paradoxically, totally allowing the fullness of the fantasy, you start to, the cracks in the fantasy start to come out. And then that's how I
Mm-hmm.
did it with IFS. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
And before we conclude today's session, Melissa, I mean, I have got a last question, and that is, I mean, from my personal viewpoint and whatever I have observed, studying and analyzing the IFS framework, IFS doesn't, seek to exile or suppress your different parts, but
Right.
it insists that you engage and understand and maybe, try and unburden them. Now, you being an IFS life coach, I would want to know, what does the healing journey look like when, someone begins to work with the parts that is actually, the driving force behind limerence, and how can that transform into healthy love?
Yeah. I just think that as we do the work of really being with the parts who are like really still in this like bad math, right? Who think if I get the positive, that's going to heal the negative. And the more I sit with them and I go, guys, I can't spend my entire life, like, I don't care, exiles, managers, firefighters, right? Guys, I can't spend my whole life chasing the positive to try to help you feel better because it doesn't work, right? So, like, a lot of ways that we can, you got to approach things from all different angles, right? One example is one time my managers got this idea that if I did a workshop at the International Coaching Federation conference, Midwest Regional Conference, this was like in like 2012, a long time ago. If I did this workshop, right, it would make me a rock star, and I'd be so cool, right, because I'd be so successful, because that's what managers think. If you're successful, people will think you're cool. Then the exiles will feel good, and you'll be great, right? Like it's the solution. Success is the solution, right? And so the managers heard about this conference, and since it was in Chicago, they were like, "We got to go. We got to do it." And I was like, "What? Like, oh my God, no! This will be so stressful. Like, this will be way too stressful. Like, our system does not need this right now. We need to heal. We need to work on our healing. Okay, that's what we need to do." But no, the managers are convinced. They have a limerence. They're like, "This is the thing. Success. Success is the answer." And at a certain point, you just say, "Oh my God!" Like, I mean, at that point, I wasn't able to like even convince, I couldn't even get through to them. They were like, "No, we're doing it." I'm like, "Okay, fine. You know what? You want to have a learning experience. Sometimes you just got to let your parts F around and find out. You know what I mean? It's like FAFO, fuck around and find out.
Mhm,
All right. Okay.
mhm,
You know what I'm going to do? Go ahead and like put your hat in, like put your workshop in for the conference. I know I'm going to be rejected because I'm not that caliber of a coach at this point. At 2012, like I'm just not. It's okay. No harm, no foul. They're in a limerence. They think they are. They're out to lunch, but I can't convince them. So it's like, you know what? Fine, have an experience in real life. That's fine. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you got to do that with your parts. You just got to be like, okay, I'll be with you in this learning experience, right? So we put in we applied. I let them apply, even though I was like, I'm gonna get rejected, no problem. So guess what happened? I got rejected. It's not rocket science, okay? But Sarah, what happened
mhm,
was Cynthia Lloyd Darst is a coach, really high level, like TED Talk, level coach, who was going to be like in the conference. And the reason they partly like rejected me was because like she does parts work. And so they were like, we already have a parts person. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, cool. Like I get it. But she dropped out because she had better things to do than go to the Midwest Regional Conference of like the International Coaching Federation. Cause like, she's like, whatever. She's just, So then they got back to me and they're like, oh, we want you to do the presentation. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? What is happening? So now I got to do
mhm,
this, right? Okay, fine. Okay, my managers got me into this. So for 6 weeks, all I do is like prepare, 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 prepare. And I worked so hard to get ready. It was like murder for my whole system because I don't usually like work that hard and grind. I'm not that kind of person. Exiles are like, we're dying. It's so hard, but we did it, right? We
Mm-hmm.
go, we do the workshop. Okay. And we do a great job. Like we knock it out of the park. We're rock star. Like we're everything the managers, like their vision. We're like, oh my God, we did this beautiful workshop and people loved it. And it was amazing. Right. So they're like, see, now you can feel better, exiles. Sarah, come on. Like just because I was a rock star for one day and I did an amazing job of this, one workshop at a conference, does that mean my exiles are healed? Please. So I'm on this super high, like the day of the conference, right? And then the next day, I just snap right back to like the same. My exiles are just as sad as they always are. And my managers just about have a stroke. They're like, what? What's happening? Like, what? We just worked 6 weeks straight to feed you success. Why isn't it working? And I'm like, well, guys, what's this learning lesson like? And they're like, and I had to do all this IFS work with the managers because they were crushed and devastated to learn that success does not heal exiles. Success does not heal exiles because your math is wrong. You cannot add, even if I had a plus 100 because I was really a rock star at the workshop, it doesn't mean that therefore, oh, now my exiles are healed. No, it just means I had a great experience. I did a great job. The managers had a lot of fun, but it didn't touch the exiles. And they were they were like really astonished, shocked, devastated. They were like, oh my God, you're not kidding me. Success does not feed exiles. Success does not heal exiles. And that was really like a watershed moment for my managers when they realized, holy shit, we are wrong. Like our
Mm-hmm.
idea of what fixes our system and what makes us feel better, it is wrong. And that was a turning point in my relationship with them because then they were more available to hear me when I said, listen, guys, we have 2 choices here. Okay. You can keep putting all our energy into external success because that's your mistaken limerent idea that that's what's going to make the exiles feel better. Or we can do it the IFS way, which is let's continue to work to unburden the exiles and do our deep healing and grief work, right? Because when you grieve a negative, that's when you erase the negative. You can't fix it with a positive, but you can erase it with grief work, with healing, with real deep root cause healing work. Which
Mm-hmm.
you guys rather take? And they were like, we'll take IFS for 200, Alex, right? They were like,
Mm-hmm.
work. This sucked. There is nothing worse than waking up the day after you do something as successfully as you possibly could, and the exiles are still just as sad as they were the day before. That is a suck feeling. And so they really learned, and so they got way more on board with doing the deeper healing work. So sometimes I think you just have to like let your managers maybe like do their plan and really be with them in the process and experience that it didn't work and help them, process through that it didn't work. And then they'll be more on board with, oh, wow, we really got to do the deeper healing work because this limerence doesn't work. But when you get like, when you have a limerence, right? And you get really deep into it, you can work through it, whether you're acting it out or not, and learn, like if you act it out and you learn it didn't work, you learn, right? And if you have it and you work through it and you work through it and you work through it and you don't act it out, like I'm kind of glad I didn't have sex with that dude that, I was like crushing on, right? You get to the other side of it and you also learn, oh, that was a fantasy. Either way, like whether you act it out or you don't, like your system learns limerence doesn't pay. These limerences do not give me the thing I thought I was going to get because only deep healing work gives me what I want. And that is you really, through the deep healing work, you have the experience, your parts get the experience of being deeply connected to the self, which is love. That is true, deep self-love, right? And then you learn. You really start to learn the difference of that feeling of, oh my gosh, there's somebody here who's here for me no matter what I feel, who doesn't judge me, who's consistent, who's compassionate, who's connected, who's curious, really deeply, truly curious about me, who really wants to know about me. And they start to really deeply take in that experience of real love, which is the relationship with the self. That's where you win.
Wow. Thank you so much, Melissa. And I would request all my YouTube viewers to go and check out, her website, her social media handle, I mean, on Substack and YouTube. And please go ahead and, show some love. And in case if you need, help related to IFS and, healing, please connect with her. And Melissa, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to have you again with
Yes,
something
yeah, that'll be
interesting.
super fun. Yeah, so my Substack is Radical IFS. So yeah.
Yes, please. And I'm going to mention the link and I'm going to mention the email ID also in the description box below the video. So you guys can check and, you can connect and show some love to Melissa's work. Thank you so much, Melissa, for joining in today.
Thanks, Sarah.